Today we are working on greatest common factor factoring. You might remember this as GCF. So look at 6x and negative 18. You want the greatest thing that you can divide out of both of them. That would be 6. And you're basically taking each term and dividing it by 6. 6x divided by 6 is x. Negative 18 divided by 6 is negative 3. Your factored form is 6 times the quantity x minus 3. If you ever want to check to make sure you did this correctly, you can always redistribute. 6 times x is 6x, 6 times negative 3 is negative 18. We are simply undoing the distributive property. 10y to the third minus 25y to the third. First, focus on the numbers. What do 10 and 25 have in common? 5. Once you figured out that 10 and negative 25 have 5 in common, now we need to look at the y's. The first one has y to the third, the second one has y squared. You can take y squared out of both of them. Y to the third is like y times y times y. Y squared is 2 of them, so you can pull 2 out of both of them. Okay, once we do that, 10y to the third divided by 5y squared. 10 divided by 5 is 2. Y third, taking out y squared, is y. Negative 25y squared divided by 5y squared. Negative 25 divided by 5 is negative 5, and we're taking the y squared out. Try C on your own. X squared and x have x in common. X squared divided by x is x. What is x divided by x? 1. It is very important that you have a 1 there. When you divide something by itself, you are left with a 1. Okay, let's move on to greatest common factor factoring with trinomials. Let's actually do B first and then A. So in B, what do 2x squared, 8x, and 12 have in common? Start with the numbers. What do negative 2, 8, and negative 12 have in common? 2. Okay, now, huge helpful hint. If your first term is negative, factor out a negative. It will make whatever comes next easier if your first term is not negative. So negative 2, and now look at the x's. Do all 3 terms have x's in common? No, so we don't have an x in common. We can't factor out an x. Negative 2x squared divided by negative 2 is x squared. 8x divided by negative 2 would be negative 4x. Negative 12 divided by negative 2 is positive 6. First, look at the numbers. 3, negative 15, and 12. What do 3, negative 15, and 12 have in common that you can divide out of all of them? 3. Then look at your x's. The first one has x. The second one has x squared. The third one has x. What could you divide out of all 3 of those? Okay. They have an x in common. Then look at your y's, y squared, y, and y. You can divide a y out of them. So 3xy. Take a moment on your own and try to divide each of these terms by 3xy to see what you have left in the parentheses. Okay, 3xy squared. We're dividing out the 3, dividing out the x. Y squared divided by y is y. Negative 15 divided by 3 is negative 5. The y cancels, but we'll still have an x. 12 divided by 3 is 4. The x cancels, the y cancels. This would be our final factored form. All right, example 3. Okay, this one, I want everybody to pay very close attention to this because this is the step of factor by grouping that most people get caught on. So I'm going to highlight some things. Do you see how both of these terms have an x plus 2 or an x minus 2 in parentheses? The factored form is x squared plus 3 times x minus 2. And I will re-highlight so that you can see where this all came from. If I gave you this thing and asked you to multiply it out, what would you do? You would take x squared and distribute it. That's what's written right there in this portion of that statement. Then you would take 3 and distribute it. That is what's written in this portion. That statement in part A is the distributive property fully written out. The first term times the x minus 2, the second term times the x minus 2. That's why the x minus 2 appears twice. So when you have something times x minus 2 and then something else times that same thing, it collapses down into the x squared and the plus 3 in the first set of parentheses, the x minus 2 in the second set of parentheses. So let's try that in part B. The only problem is I don't see anything in front of the second set of parentheses. What number is in front of that second set of parentheses? A 1. So we've got 2x and plus 1. That would be the first part. And then the 3x minus 4, do you see how it's the same on both of them? It has to be the same on both of them. That would be the second part of the factored form. Okay, example 4 is going to combine what we did in example 1 and 2 with example 3. So let's look at example 4. This is true factor by grouping. For factor by grouping, you split this 4-termed polynomial into 2 groups. Directly after the second term, split it. So you have the first 2 terms in the first group and the third and fourth term in the second group. In the first group, what do 2x to the third and 8x squared have in common? 2x squared. If I divide both terms by 2x squared, we put whatever is left in the parentheses. 2x to the third divided by 2x squared is x. 8x squared divided by 2x squared plus 4. Okay, huge helpful hint. Whatever symbol is in front of the third term, drop that symbol down. That's the symbol that you are going to use. Now think about 3x and 12. What do 3x and 12 have in common? 3. 3x divided by 3 is x. 12 divided by 3 is 4. These 2 sets of parentheses should be identical. If they are not identical, you either did it wrong or it can't be factored. Your final answer, your final factored form would be 2x squared plus 3 times the quantity x plus 4. Okay, I would like you to try part B on your own. If you're watching the video, pause the video, give B a try, and then play the video to check your work. First, you split it after the second term. First group, 2x to the third and 4x. I definitely have 2 in common and an x. If I take 2x to the third divided by 2x, I'd be left with x squared. 4x divided by 2x would be 2. That helpful hint, whatever symbol is in front of your third term, drop that symbol down. Okay, here's the problem. X squared, negative x squared, and negative 2. What do they have in common? They don't have anything in common except the negative and 1. If they ever don't have anything in common, they have 1 in common. You can always divide things by 1. But in this case, we're dividing by -1. Negative x squared divided by -1 is positive x squared. -2 divided by -1 is positive 2. Because we divided out the negative, now our parentheses match, and our factored form is 2x minus 1 times the quantity x squared plus 2. Here's your assignment for 6.1, which is also in your notes. The assignment sheet is that first slide of your notes, so you always have that with you. Book assignment starts on page 271.